Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Studio. I'm very excited to welcome back my friend, my pal, my colleague, my empress, who I learn from all the time. Blonka Winkfield is back. Hello, Blonka.
Hello. Glad to be back.
And I invited Blonka specifically for this topic because we're going to tackle networking. And some people hear the word networking. Well, let's be real. Most people hear the word networking and we cringe inside. Our stomach is filled with butterflies and we're like, oh God, right? Most people. However, years and years ago, when Blonka and I were out one time, having a cocktail, a libation somewhere. I know you're nervous now what I'm going to say, but
I don't remember.
But you said, well, because we've had a few of them together over the years. But one of the things you said to me was you said, I love first dates. And I remember looking at you like you were a creature from the unknown. And I was like, who loves first dates? And this is probably back in the days when we were in dating form, like we were, dating. And you'd be like, I love first dates. They're fantastic. What are you talking about? And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's why she's so good at networking, because she kind of probably thinks of them all as first dates. Because you were like, I love to get to know people. I love that sense where you get to ask them tons of questions. And so anyway, I say all that to say, besides just first dates, Blonka is very good at networking. She's also very good at sales, but she's very good at that idea of connectivity and networking and meeting people and making connections to other people and finding ways to find value. And when we define, for those of you out there going, what is, when we're looking at networking, I looked it up in the dictionary because I was like, I know we have an opinion of what it is, but what does Oxford say? And they say, the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. And I was like, okay, when you put it that way, networking doesn't sound so bad. I think it's when people think that it has to be connected to a specific goal or outcome, or, that it feels maybe slimy or not real to who you are, or that you're doing something, nefarious or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought, let's start off. What strategies do you use to most effective build and maintain those kind of professional relationships, contacts, things?
I think it's so funny because you tell that story. And when you first asked me to do this, I was like, I hate networking. I absolutely hate it. But I think when I started thinking about it, the thing that I do that works for me personally is I do think of it all as like a first date, which is what I love. And I think it's more of the aspect of the definition that you just gave, that's social. And I think if people keep it, it's very hard to do both, but if you can look at it as a social thing, which a lot of people are better at, than looking at it as a professional thing, for me, it takes away a bit of the anxiety. The first rule you'll always see, when you're like, what should I do for networking? One, it's have your elevator pitch ready. That's thing one. And number two is set a goal. And I kind of don't go at networking that way. I like to meet people that I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. I look in a room and I go, who seems interesting? And then I'll talk to that person, because one of the things that I think is good about all the networking tips you see is they're network with people on all different levels. And I think when you go into a room specifically, you're I have a goal, got to meet the president of this company. You may miss out on meeting the assistant to the president of that company, who could make an introduction to you even easier, make that thing even easier for you. So I kind of look at it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen you do it too. You even have the look that you just had on your face where you look around the room and you're like, who is that person? Yeah, that's a very good thing. And I also love what you just said about take away the pressure of it being professional. I mean, you always want to be professional, but don't maybe just think how can I actually just get to like this person as a person? And part of our work is part of who the person is. So it's bound to come up, especially if you're in a professional setting, like a conference or a, some sort of networking event. So, and I think that, there are some kind of truisms. Some people, it does work to say, let's set a goal for ourselves before this, especially if you're I find when I coach people who have been told maybe by their bosses that the next step of their leadership is they do need to widen their network. Sometimes they need a goal, okay, just go to this event. That might be one the step one. Step two is talk to somebody besides the people you came with. Because if you go with other people, which I do recommend makes networking easier, it's just like going to a party with your girlfriends. It's much easier than going alone. So going with some people is good, but then can we bring in other people and not just have every meal or every drink or every whatever by ourselves? And number three is like, maybe you have to have some sort of goals around questions to ask people or things to think about. But then there can be folks where if you've done this for a long time, like yourself, where those goals just get in your way and you just have to have those questions, like you said, of who's an interesting person in this room that I want to get to know. And then trust that by you going up to that person is going to lead you to other people. Like I've seen Blonka will do that. Exactly what you said. Find somebody, go up to them, get to know them. And then that person likes you so much that they introduce you to 5 of their friends who then come up to you. So instead of like a push mentality, it creates a pull. And then people start coming up to you. And I think that is also, actually, this has a lot more to do with first dates than,
See?
But you don't want to always be pushing, right? You got to lure them in as well. And that is one good way to do it for sure.
Yeah. And I think if you like going to conferences, for me, particularly when I go alone, I'm always looking for somebody that, like, you go to your first little session or meeting or whatever, happy hour, you meet someone. And then if you can develop a really good personal connection with that person, like, just in a more, as I said, in a more casual way, it's really personable, and you tell them what you're looking for, they become your advocate when they leave your side. They may go into different sessions, they may go to different things. And like, the last conference I went to, I met this one woman. She's like, I'm leaving the next day. And I was like, oh man, I thought you were going to be my person. But then she was like texting me the whole time. She's like, oh, I just ran into this person. You got to meet this person. I told them about you. So look for this woman. And, so you get to build layers, when you develop a deep personal connection, one of the things that you see is that, and it's a fine line, people like a deeper personal connection, even if it's happening quickly, more so than like a personal, like, hi, what do you do? Oh, they like a deeper personal connection. And I found when you do that, then those people become advocates for you, especially in a networking setting. They will go out, they'll leave to go to the bar to get a drink, see somebody that they know. Oh, you got to come over here and meet this lady. She did it. They'll do that quicker, in my experience, than if you meet someone like, what do you do? And, start a very kind of robotic kind of, line of questioning that way. And that is a thing that works, definitely for me. Now, of course, you want to have deep, meaningful conversations. One of the big things about networking is being appropriate as well. So you don't want to go in and just be like, blah, personally vomit yourself all over the person. But there's ways to like ingratiate yourself to people, talk basic. Oh, you're at this conference. Oh, do you have a family? Did you leave them? Oh, it's gotta be so hard. The kids, that gets a conversation going immediately. Or if you don't feel comfortable with that, oh, you left your team. How's that going? Have they been calling you the whole time you're here? And then that starts a different kind of a professional relationship, but it deepens the relationship more so than what do you do?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Like to deepen that connection. And I've seen it where also you've been somewhere, because I do study you clearly, where I've also seen you go up to somebody and say, hey, I loved that question that you asked in the bigger group. And then you'll say something specifically, I was thinking about it and blah, 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 blah. And then they're immediately like, oh, because you started with a compliment of something that they contributed to the group that meant something to you or made you think more deeply, which immediately opens up a real conversation. Do you know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting to watch. You hit upon something that is one of those cringe moments, I think, in networking, which is that kind of dedicated networking time where they're like, okay, guys, the poor facilitator on the stage is like, okay, guys, you're going to each find 3 business cards, go to it. And then you're just like, huh. And everyone's like, hi, I know we're supposed to do this. And then some people are, have taken some classes. So they're super like giving you their elevator pitch or they're, got their little tricks up their sleeve. But like, what's a better way to do that part where some people head for the doors? I mean, at that part, they know they're supposed to be there for networking, but something about the facilitator telling you that it's time to like get your 3 networks in that you immediately are like groan, like what's a trick for that?
For me, I always go, I hate this part. Okay, so we got to get it done. So, and as soon as, for me, I use humor a lot, and to me, that's a great icebreaker if you can do that, because you're already saying what everybody's thinking. So if you just put it on the table and then push it to the side, then people laugh. They go, oh, I know, right? Okay. So like, what do you do again? And it just kind of goes from there. So I think an icebreaker is important, in all of these things, because you do have the people who will sit there and go, I'll start. My name is Jim, and da da da. And then people are like, okay, it becomes rote after a little while. There are definitely things that you want to do in networking so you can get your point across, big things. But I think letting it be a little more fluid is always very helpful to me. I think for me, networking is most important kind of a lot of it on the back end, more so than on the front end. Front end to me, it's more social, more interesting. The back end, the biggest thing is the follow up. Once you've done this then what are you doing? Because you can meet 100 people. If you're not following up well with them and specifically, then it's kind of pointless. Because for me, that's the thing about networking. You have to have that specific, that's where my goals come in on the back end. For me, I'll meet as many people as I can, talk to them, figure things out. But to me, it's on the back end. I had a girlfriend who was amazing. She worked for this fashion company. Some people know Betsy Johnson was really big in the 80s and 90s. And we'd go to networking events together in New York and just parties. And she would literally have a list in her little BlackBerry. There's 8 people I have to meet here tonight. And I'm like, okay. And we'd go around the room and I'd help her find those 8 people. So for some people, that goal setting thing is really good and it works very specifically. But what she always said was, great, I met those 8. 3 of them I'm going to actually follow up with. Because in this time, met those 8, interesting, not interesting, think we can work together. We really probably can't. These are the 3 that I'm going to hone in on, and I'm going to go hard on the follow-up with these 3.
And hope get one that is like a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, because networking is like first dating. You're not going to get everything. You're not going to get everybody.
That's right.
You're not going to, there may never be a second date. You have to have, with networking, a lot of humility. You have to go in knowing, I might not meet anybody. These people might not want to talk to me. You may go into a room, that happened to me recently. Went into a room, I was like, there's a woman there. I was like, I need to meet her. I really need to meet her. And I think this woman hates me, actually. I've seen her 4 different art events, and I was like, I got to meet her. And those of you who listen to Christine's podcast time and time again, she's this. She loves to make people like her. She's like, this Christine is like, I can't. The person doesn't like me. This is crazy. It's driving me insane.
True.
And I have a lot of that in me as well. And so the fact that I'd seen this woman 3 or 4 times, I'd given her a compliment. She's super stylish. Oh my God, that outfit's amazing. And literally, she was like, I was like, oh my God. And it happened a couple of more times at events. And I was like, what have I done to make this woman, not like me? And, I had to get over that literally, because you can go down that well. That day, the first time that it happened, I could have just been like, okay, I'm just going to stand over here in a corner with my little glass of rosé and not talk to anybody else. But you don't. You keep going. You may have a mission in mind to meet one person, and that interaction doesn't go well, or you can't meet them. Don't let that stop you from going on to the next one. And as I said, you may meet somebody who actually, and that's what happened with me and this chick. I was at a fundraiser. I see a friend of mine, a guy friend. He calls me over. He's like, hi. He gives me a big, huge hug. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. Da, da, da. And the woman he's standing over is the woman who I think hates me. And now, he introduces me to her. And now my introduction to her comes with a bit of cachet, because I've been introduced to her by somebody she trusts and knows.
Right.
And so now I'm not just a stranger walking up to her at this event. Hi, how you doing? Do the compliment first, and then, blah, blah, blah. So it's been a better road. So, don't get, discouraged if it doesn't go your way, when you don't get to meet the, CEO that you wanted to meet, or you meet them and they really don't want to talk to you or give you their information. Move on to
because look at it from their point of view. Those people probably are inundated constantly with dumb, stupid requests, and just so I love that. Don't necessarily have to go with that person, but if you do, you go in through someone else. That's a great idea. I think you also pointed out how the importance of the follow-up, right? And it really is a beginning, middle, and it's a cycle constantly of how you deepen these relationships. And one of it is you plan beforehand, and maybe it's, as you get better, you have to do less planning because you're just better at it from experience. But in the beginning, you have to. And those of you who run businesses or run small offices or you run a team, it would behoove you to do some networking training with your teams, because you're talking about a bunch of young people who have been through COVID, maybe in the beginning of their professional relationship. So they did not get those really important years of interacting, and young people who, like Blonka and I's kids grew up on social media, grew up having conversations online. And so a lot of their networking, my kids have networks everywhere from Instagram.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm always like, how'd you meet that person? They're
Yep.
like, online, you know, through a friend, through a friend, through a friend, through a friend, you know, that they can't even. So that's one networking piece they have, right? Through LinkedIn and these things that can happen, I guess, in the professional world. For kids, it's Snapchat or whatever. So your young people that are in your office don't have the same training as you do, and maybe even need a lot more help in this area than you think. Because when I coach young people in companies, I am amazed at what they'll say keeps them from even going to a work event. You know, I've had to tell people that chose to step out of not going to their work luncheon or whatever. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like that's internal networking. You at least need to network within your own company, even if you're not in sales or you're not trying. By the way, everyone should be in sales. Everyone is in sales regardless, right? Everyone's in customer service and everyone's in sales. But either way, even internally, you need to be going to your company parties. And I've had people say, because there's a lot more young people out there that don't drink. So they're like, it's really hard to go to these parties because I don't drink. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because you can get ice with soda water and a lime and no one knows the difference, and you can do it. You know what I mean? Like you can do it. You just got to plan a little better. Come up with one person that you're going to talk to. Just make it small, and then start to grow up. But I really encourage you to think about your team. And if you're frustrated that they're not networking either internally or externally, doing some sort of training with them is so key and will make them feel so much more confident going out there. I mean, Blonka, you work and talk to constantly a lot of young people, giving them these kinds of tips, right?
And what I was going to say is and the biggest thing about young people who have done this amazing job of finding their own network online, the networks online are inherently more casual, meeting somebody online. So they need a lot of training in how to make that transition from meeting people online to meeting them in real life. And what's kind of, I hate to say appropriate as a word, but they're networking online. It's a lot easier. They see everything. They're talking about, things that may not be particularly appropriate when networking in person. So it's a very different kind of thing. And they have to learn a bit of that training and what goes along with that. Even like presence in person. You're online. I'm typing away, eating a sandwich, and I'm networking with other people. But you need to know that, the podcast we talked about before, that executive presence that you need to bring to a networking event is different. Or like, I'm a great networker online. Very different than standing up right in front of someone and trying to get their attention and trying to, get them to give you a bit of their social capital and their time. That becomes a quite a bit of a different scenario that they may not be used to.
Absolutely. And that episode of that Blonka is talking about, it's a good one to look at as well. Episode number 24, if you want to get back to that. All right. So can you think of any other mistakes that people make in networking that you've either seen, noticed, done, anything?
I think it's kind of what I was talking about before, is always going with the big shark in the room. You think you got to meet the biggest person in the room. That's such a huge one because of what we've been talking about. That person has been inundated all night long with people trying to meet them. So I think, that's one of the big ones. You can also network laterally, especially for people who, younger people who aren't used to doing it. Practice laterally.
Yeah.
Networking with other people in the room that look like your age, they may be in your same kind of position. Practice with them before you try to roll up on the president of the company. Practice with them or people who may be a little bit junior to you, and then do that. The other thing that I think that people don't think about is in networking, they walk into a room like, what am I going to get? What are you going to give?
Mm-hmm.
Networking can go the other way as well, because you might be like, I'm pretty junior here, but there's someone more junior than you who might be like, oh, I got to meet her. You got to think about it as a two-way street. So what are you giving people when you're talking to them? And always know, oh, you know what? I have a connection I need to make with you. Think about those things. When you're talking to them, you may be thinking about how they can introduce you to somebody that's important or get you a gig there. But what are you doing for them? Because it should be a two-way street. And when they feel like it's a two-way street, they're more apt to follow up with you. They're more apt to keep in touch and to deepen that relationship than when they feel like you just came to them and like, hi, I need you to do this for me, or can I get this job, or can I work on this project? That's all a one-way street.
Yeah. And they're getting that all the time. So you imagine everybody coming up to them is saying some version of that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love it. Keith Ferrazzi, he's written a couple books. So the latest one I think was on co-elevation, but it's exactly that idea of how do you elevate everybody around you? and that elevates you, right? And he wrote a book called like Never Eat Alone, I think it was. And he really talked about this idea of like every meal he was going to have, I think for a year, he was going to take someone out or go to have coffee with someone and just think how, and not think anything about himself yet, but like, how can I help you? And some people will listen to that and say, oh, that's so, you have another agenda. You have a secret. You're not doing this for real. And he'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm actually thinking, how can I be of value to this person in any way? Whether it's find them a babysitter, whether it's help them, with something that they need at work that's, a new assistant or whatever it was that they go, oh, I know someone that might be good. Anything that's what he would focus on. And he is hugely successful in this world. Do you know what I mean? Because of just that idea. And I love that idea because it's really much easier for some of us to see how we can offer help to others than to ask for it. And so it's not to mean that you'll never ask. It's just the entree into creating a relationship, because that's what we do, is see how we can help others, even if it's just listening.
Exactly. And that's another thing. Most people want to be listened to. People want to be listened to. And so when you go in with that kind of mindset, I think it's very helpful for you being on the other side of it. And then, one thing that sounds like so cliche, and I hate to say that because, it's one of the things that we thrive at and teach, but the active listening piece of that. So when you put it out there, like, what can I do for you? Or how can I, like, that's great. But you actually have to be paying attention, listening, and letting that person know that you're doing that so they don't feel like you have a hidden agenda. Because when you say, what can I do for you? Then you're like, okay, I can ask, I need to call her and tell her, I know she's friends with this. They see that in your mind, that you're not paying attention to them, because that's when it does seem like there's a hidden agenda. And you just asked me that question for the sake of whatever it is you want to get from me. So let's be mindful when you're networking. How are you paying attention? Are you listening? The more you listen, and the more you bring those things up again, oh, you said oh yeah, I know you like soccer because you just said you were a soccer mom, blah, 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 and they go, oh, you remember that, like those kinds of things. If you're really genuinely listening, that deepens the relationship, as well.
And this is the other thing that drives me crazy. And I try to get better at it myself, but it's hard when you're in a room with a lot of people to actually not only listen, but one of the social cues that helps people know you're listening is you look at them in the eye. But for some people in a room with a lot of people, you're constantly just distracted. And so looking around the room, but it makes them feel like whatever they're saying to you is not important. And you're looking for a better person to come in, like a first date, like a date, right? Is someone locked in on your eyes? And, I try to tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, look at me. He's like, I'm listening to you. I'm like, but I don't know that if you don't look at me every once in a while, right? So like, sorry, babe, but like, look at, like, I was at an event recently and I was amazed at how many people, and I'm a fascinating person, cannot just look you in the eye while they're talking to you. Like they have to be like, who's here? Who's here? Oh, and then come back to you and then looking over at the other person. And I'm like, oh, that is so frustrating. I don't want to be that person. How can I look at this person?
It's the worst feeling in the world.
Right? So I just think no matter what the person is talking about, can I just give them the gift of a few moments of my attention, rapt attention, even in this sea of other people, is such a gift to somebody that they're being listened to. I love that. We have an upcoming episode on listening skills that Erica's going to be on talking about that. But let's keep going because I'm loving these tips. They're helping me already. What's another tip that you have either given people or you've done or you think people should do more of?
One big one is read the room. That is huge. There's a time for networking. Sometimes there's not a time for it. There's in the span of 2 hours, you may realize, oh, this is a time where people are doing this thing, or it seems to be more serious, or the person I want to reach out to, I can tell they're intensely involved in another conversation with somebody. But I've been waiting, because the worst thing about networking, especially in a big space where you don't know anybody, is the double dutch. And what I say by that, person you want to meet is already talking to another person. That person walks away. Another person comes in really quickly. And you're just like, you stand like this. You're like,
I love the double dutch.
You ever seen a game of double dutch where the person's like trying to figure out how to get in? That's what it is in networking. And you see it and you watch it and it builds such anxiety in you. She's going to kill me. I went to an event with a friend of mine who is an Oscar Award winner. And we went to another Oscar Award winner's party. And she'd been wanting to work with this woman forever. And in Hollywood, it's a very big deal. It's like, I need to work with her. She's an amazing director. I need to get in there. And throughout most of the night, because it was this woman's party, the director's party, my friend was double dutching all night. Like waiting for the press to leave her, waiting for other, stars, that were in the movie to leave her. And she was like this. And then she just got frustrated. She's like, I'm not doing it anymore. She's like, I was like, well, you know what? Now it's shown. this was not the appropriate time. You got to
Mm.
read the room. You can already tell she's overworked. She's overwhelmed. This is not the appropriate moment. So you have to read the room. Don't just stand there and keep doing that. Leave. Go, get a drink, calm down, and then we'll both keep our eyes out to find another time when you should approach her.
Mm.
And then in the end, she was sitting there for like 1 minute by herself with like her publicist, I guess. And I was like, it's the end. And I was like, there you go. Go over there. And she's like, well, nobody's over there. And I was like, that's what you've been waiting for. Don't get all scared now. Like, she's like all freaked out. I was like, nobody's there. I was like, but you know, so much is reading the room. Like, it may not always be the appropriate time. It's not always about, you know, you can have all these goals and all these plans, but you got to read the room. Like, tonight might be not be the time to meet that person, you know, or it might be a little bit later in the evening, or I see that person is talking to their spouse. Let them have that moment, you know. Don't interrupt those things. You have to be very mindful. I think that's one of the big skills that people have to learn, how to read a room.
God, that's a
When
whole
to
other
lean in.
episode.
Yeah, when to lean in and when to step out, you know? That's a big one.
Yeah, I love that story. Did you make up that? The double dutch?
I've never heard anybody else say it. I don't know if I made it up. It's just an analogy that I use.
Oh my God,
for
I
things
love
like
it.
that.
I love it. And now I can't get it out of my mind. Like the double dutch. I love it. The name of a book, Blonka. That's great. Read the room, the double dutch. Yeah. Okay. One of the things I want to say that's a good tip is, you know, if you can go with somebody, a partner up, you know, Blonka and I often will go together to things. We will immediately go at different people, right, that strike us or that we want to like, and we'll sometimes say, okay, I want to get to know her, or he seems interesting, and we'll kind of split up, and then we'll come back and share each other's notes, and then it allows me to introduce somebody, Blonka, to somebody, and so forth. So we're still helping and hyping our company, but we're together, right? We're kind of helping each other in that way. So I think the buddy system is really good. And also, if you're nervous, it's nice to have some little person to hold on to a little bit.
Yeah, it alleviates that stress as well. As like, okay, now I'm in this room by myself. Now I'm stressed. Like, I have to do something, particularly if you're new to the game. You're not used to networking or you find it difficult. It is huge to have somebody else that you can use as a touchstone. You're like, okay, I've had this long conversation. Okay, I need 2 seconds to, you know, how to go for you. And you can just have a moment, you know, somebody to calm you down or somebody to hype you up. You know, when you get shot down, they're like, oh no, you're great. Go back to the next person. You know, like, it's really, really helpful in those ways. And as I said, the woman that I met at the conference, she was great because then she introduced me to a bunch of other people. She's like, I'm leaving, but I know I have all these people that I think you would be a great person, you know, to meet up with. So it's tag teaming is, to me, it's crucial. One other thing that I was thinking about is, and I said, like, I don't go out and like say I have a goal of this thing, but what you can do if you do have those goals, great. You want to meet these 5 people. But the biggest thing about meeting those 5 people, you need to do your research before you meet those 5 people. Planning ahead when it comes to networking is huge. Like, if you're going to be in a room and if you can find out who else is going to be in the room, if this your thing, find out who they are, great. Then in addition to that, find out a little bit more. And now, good, bad, or indifferent, you can find out whatever you want to find out about anybody. You know, go to their LinkedIn, go to their social, Google them, whatever it is, and find out, you know, little things. This to me, and I'm saying everybody does this. I do it in certain kinds of ways. I think this is where people think networking is slimy. When people are like, I don't like networking. I don't want to, you know, feel like I looked up this person and found out. And it kind of is, but it's also just a little bit of recon that is beneficial to
like
you.
a first date. You don't go on a
Like,
first date
I was
without
going to say,
Googling
like
them.
a first date. You go on a first date, you do a little bit of talking ahead of time, you know, you get to know a little bit about them, but you know, it's a very similar thing. So you want to know something about it, even the events that you're going to. Like, if you're going to a networking event, what does that networking event look like? Especially big ones. Go online, Google that networking event, see what people were wearing, see who was in the room, find out that kind of information ahead of time. Like, there's so many little things that will throw you off your game. Like, okay, this is a networking event. It's standing all night long. You can see the room, everybody's standing. Am I going to wear my 5-inch heels to be there all night long? Because I see in pictures, women are wearing lower. Like, there's a lot of little things that throw people off their game, oddly enough, like being uncomfortable all night long. If you've never been to this event before, but you can look it up, look to see what people are wearing. You don't want to be too overdressed. You don't want to be too underdressed. Those kind of things make you feel a little bit insecure, which can also throw you off balance in your networking and walking up to other people. So I think that's another one for younger people. Specifically, as I said, be appropriate in all things, your dress, your manner, all of those things. You don't want to go in too overdressed. You don't want to go in too underdressed. So if you can find out about the event that you're going to, like, you know, never been to my company's Christmas party. And as you said, with young people, I don't want to go. Somebody's posted pictures of those Christmas parties somewhere. Find out what it was like. Look at it. Was it fun? Did it look fun? Did it look festive? Find out that information. It will probably make you feel a little bit better about going,
Yeah, I love it. It's so true. Where if you're not wearing the right thing, you don't always feel confident, right? So I love that. And I love that idea of, going into it with a little bit of research. It isn't slimy. We do this about each other all the time, right? We're online about people. We plan meetings. Why don't we plan these things at events too? Super important. That's a great one. I'm trying to think. You just made me think of one. We're almost out of time. So I just want to say one other tip that I got is to prepare for the people that you do want to meet in case you get that moment with them, to prepare something that you're going to say that is different than what everybody else is saying to them.
Yep.
So for instance, I was at something where a reversal of the usual, I was the person who was in charge and we were meeting a whole bunch of new people. We had about 200 employees there at one of our retreats with some of our part-time people. And people come up to me all the time, right? And be like, oh, hey, you're the president of the company, blah, 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 and say this a version of the same thing. I'm so-and-so. I'm so happy to work here. Whatever. And I don't remember any of them. And I remember this one kid came up to me once, he's a young person working. And he said, hey, I just want to say, I know you're busy, but I just want to say that my best friends in college were taught by you in high school and you changed their lives. And then I was like, come back. And I was like, who? Right. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm going to help you. Like whoever this is, I'm going to help you. And that was great. And, sometimes when I go to something and I'll watch the person in the room that you want to get to, and I'll see the double dutch, one after another, say a version of the same thing. I'm so-and-so, here's a mini version of my elevator pitch. Instead, I'll think of like, what is something about this person that I want to say? And I'll think about what that opening line is, because you have a minute to capture them or to say the same thing everyone else says. And so sometimes think about like, what is that to them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the elevator speech, the pitch, all of that is important. But how do you make that your own? How do you make it a little bit different? How do you know, like, hi, I'm Blonka, I'm the senior vice president, and I would like to work with your company because, or I think, people are like, what's the pain point? Put the pain point in there. I'm going to fix your, blah, blah, blah. Sure. They've heard that all night long. So what is it about you and that makes you different, period? So some people are quirky, some people are funny, some people are very serious. You have to lean into your personality when it comes to networking. As soon as you try to go outside of who you are, that's when things usually fall flat or seem very insincere. So whatever pitch you're doing, make it your own. Make it, uniquely you, but it does have to be productive and effective. So it needs to be about that person as well and getting across that information. But you do want to make sure that you're saying things or, giving them a unique perspective on things that they've heard all night long.
Or an authentic, interesting compliment.
Them. Yep.
Because most likely you want to see them because there's something really cool about that person. I saw it happening with someone. I said, oh my God, you're the Ann Richards of this room. And she was like, oh, and she, that's an old governor of Texas. She was from the South. I knew of my age. I know she'd know that person. And I know she would think of that as somewhat a hero. And sure enough, she was a little bit shocked and complimented, and it was true. And she was like, oh, that's interesting. All right, what do you do? Tell me about you. And then that immediately opened up something that wouldn't have if I just said, hi, I'm Christine. I'm the president of this company. This is what we do. Blah, 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 blah.
Right. And those are the things that, in a room you can figure out. Like if you're seeing that person, especially you have a little bit of time to study them, maybe a little bit earlier, before you get there, or a little bit while you're in the room and just watching and kind of eavesdropping a little bit, then you can find those moments. We're at a conference here and I went to an HBCU. We are notorious for rivalries, period. Like it just is what it is. And so we always think everybody thinks their school's the best. And so, this woman, she was the head of this organization, and I'd seen in her bio at the conference that she went to one of our rival schools. And so like everybody, she's standing there and she's like, And then everybody keeps going. And then I walk up to her and I was like, oh, nice to meet you. Great conference. Like, oh, thanks. And I was like, too bad you went to FAM though. And she was like, excuse me. And I was like, she was like, where'd you go? I was like, I went to Howard. She goes, should have known. And it just started a conversation.
Right.
Like, and
like
so
your friends.
Right. Like, and it was we pushed past 15 minutes of getting to know each other, at an event into a much heartier, laughing conversation. And so, if you can find out those things ahead of time, particularly when, you're looking up somebody, I looked her up on LinkedIn and that's why I found out where she went to school. So I knew if I saw her, that's the first thing that I was going to do when I met her.
Right. And it can be fun. And it doesn't have to be slimy. It can be authentic and fun and just getting to know people socially, getting to know them professionally. People are interesting if you get past the stuff that, we put our walls that we put up. So I love it. Blonka, thank you so much for joining us and just starting us off on this topic. If you out there want to learn more, we can definitely do more of these episodes. There's also really good training that Blonka can provide, that we can provide, that can help you and your teams with this. But just try a few of these tips and get started. And I promise you, it's going to get better with practice, right?
Gotta practice.
Double Dutch.
Yes.
I love
double
it.
Dutch. More first dates, more double Dutching.
Yes.
It'll all be good.
Thanks everybody for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.